All right, what are we talking about?
Yeah, talking about automation versus AI. When to
Uh,
use automation, when to use AI, when to use both.
yeah,
How do you separate those?
I know that's good. I don't know the answer. No, but I think, yeah, we could talk through it. I think, obviously we're probably thinking, well, I'm mostly thinking about HubSpot when we talk about that, since HubSpot has both AI and automation. And um, even in the broader topic, I had some good conversations just in general, like about AI, how we're using it, how other people are using it. Because one of the things that I think the everyday person using it
Mhm.
has this it isn't automation.
Right.
So, there's some sort of like, I put in this prompt in this thing, and then it gave me some result, that I need to now copy and paste and put somewhere else, right? Like it wrote my email, and then I took it and copied it and pasted it in my email, and then hit send, right? So that's like, automation would be that it wrote the email, put it in your email, and then sent it,
Yep.
So that's kind of the difference. And that's, and of course, there's dozens of people working, or dozens, hundreds, probably thousands even, working on that connection. But, those big ones, the way that they're built, or the way that, a lot of the new companies are like, hey, how do I leverage AI and then apply it to my actual workflows so that it does become an automatic thing. And so there's the difference. Like if you've removed a human from the equation, I feel like it's automation. If you multiplied our, the AI and human combination is like right now kind of the win, because of, instead of searching and reading and all that for hours at a time, you can kind of leverage AI for that to kind of be a time saver. But um, depending on the tool, like it may or may not be as cleanly integrated, and the integrations is what is separating, I think, um, the businesses that are really leveraging it and really getting time back, and those that are still working on it. But when it comes to HubSpot, I mean, you kind of have a little bit of both happening there. They have a bunch of beta tools out that are like the prospecting agent that's like, let me do research, come up with a bunch of emails, and then, a sequence, and then we'll start prospecting for
Yep.
you. And so that's nice. But I think one of the things to think about whenever it's both, but I think process mapping is such a big part of solutions. Like when we're talking about automation, it means that there's some, process from point A to point X, and there's some amount of steps in between. And the idea of automation is that there's, those steps just happen without any kind of additional need of personal input in order to make them happen. And it's okay if there's personal input, but then you kind of have some sort of break in the automation to where it then goes off on its own. So, and a lot of that is important to kind of, that's where process mapping becomes such an important part of like that solution. I'm just going to beat this thing up and sound too, it's going to be turned into, what is that? Is it AMR? Is that what it's called? Like when they, AMR? I don't know what it's called, but what I'm talking about, when they do all that
I can't stand
like
it.
sound stuff. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't get it. I guess I'm not one of those people, but yeah, when it comes to understanding the process, and there's kind of two things that I find there, right? Because you have a process today that you're leveraging, and as like a solution partner or somebody that's trying to, move your process into some sort of digital thing in order to, obviously get more information or whatever it is, like improve your understanding of what's working and what's not. There's a lot of having to first understand what the current process is,
Yep.
right? But just like, I think of there's a lot to that, because once you understand the process, there's this aspect of like, okay, here's how we currently do it, and here's the tools that we currently use. And then you have to be enough of an expert on this other tool to kind of say like, okay, well, this process, we could map exactly how you have it, But then there's other opportunities. AI may be one of those, that where there's a way to, let's get rid of, you're using a, a handheld screwdriver in this step or whatever. And now we could just use like a battery operated something. So you don't have to like,
Yeah.
like break your forearm doing, screwing with a flathead. And so those kind of pieces where it's like, okay, so we're going to change this step in your process to get this result, or we're going to combine these two steps because now we have an AI input area where they can take care of these couple things, so that as we move through this process, the end results are the same, and the points throughout the process that need either, if it's an informational understanding piece, so like a dashboard or some piece that kind of understands, like, I'm thinking of, I don't know, maybe it's like number of opens or something that then triggers some other automation to be like, hey, this person opened this email 5 times or clicked on these 3 things. So now they're in this new tier of engagement. And so we want to follow up with them today. Yeah. So those are some of the things that I think, to kind of think about is your processes first need to be fully understood. Then you need to be working with somebody that understands the new like place that you're trying to go. HubSpot is this example, in order to lay out your process in a way that's actually going to be functional in the new tool, and then training. And then of course, everything that goes with the change management of like, hey, guy who's really good at turning screwdriver manually. Yeah. We have ways to, increase your working time or increase your, how long you can do this, because, instead of having to look like Popeye for, to manually operate these things, like we got ways to cut down on that. Not that I am against that aspect of a person, but just, these are some of the things. So, yeah.
I think that's like a good, like, kind of understanding of automation is taking those processes and then just having them repeat, and then adding that AI in is like, okay, well, like AI can understand that process, and having that layered on top of, because like I think a lot of people look at AI as automation because it is doing something without you having to do something.
Sure.
Right. I put in this prompt, it does this thing. Automation. Where it's like, kinda, it's done something, but it's not necessarily automation, because you still had to tell it to do something, even if it does 12 things that you told it to do. It is not necessarily automation because it's not happening without your involvement.
Right.
Where AI can come in and you can give it a bunch of prompts and train it to be, hey, look at this process, understand if it is working the right way, set up an automation flow that, has this desired outcome, add all of the different type of if-thens,
Yep.
AI can do all of those things, and then that process is, and then it can continue to learn from that.
Right. And that's the thing, is that it can lay that out for you, and then you can apply it into your system or into your process. And that's, and that's one of the things too, is like a lot of the times the automation is the last thing that we do, because it's like, first you have to make sure that everything works as you intended it. And then scenarios is such an important thing. There's always like, generally people know they're 98% of the time this is what happens. And that could be still a good automation thing. We just have to understand the 2% gap.
Right.
But those are some of the things where, simple processes tend to be the quickest and easiest to automate, because it's just like, this is a manual process now, but 100% of the time when this step happens, i.e., invoices or a contract assigned, then this invoice gets sent, right? Like if that is always the 2 steps, then that is a great thing to automate, because hey, as soon as this invoice is signed, let's make a trigger off of that then spins up this invoice, and then this invoice gets emailed to the same person or to the billing person or whatever it is. Like that's the kind of stuff that, where automation is ideal when you're talking about that stuff. But yeah, when it comes to the AI piece, but that is also exactly what people are working on. Mm-hmm. Like that is exactly the tools, like even us, it's like leveraging payload as a headless CMS and having kind of this thing that comes out of the box is like, every kind of Lego you could possibly imagine.
Right.
So it's like, what do you want to build? I don't know, anything. It's like you do whatever. It's interesting is working on building these integrations so that it's like, hey, out of the box, it at least has these handful of like pre-built Legos that is already bolted on. Us being a solutions partner, making sure that like our stuff works with HubSpot seamlessly, right? Like as an example. So those are different things that I think are right now that is what like everybody, that's what people are working on. That's what when they're when these companies that are working with AI, and what are the challenges there that we see too is that if you're again one of these bigger kind of companies that have been around a long time, and you have a lot of processes and a lot of things built already that are already very automated and already very like, you productized everything and it's verticalized, and it's like, look, like if you're, this audience member and this demographic, this persona, we sell you this thing that comes pre-assembled. It's way harder, I think, to take that very dialed in, very like solid process and then leverage these new technologies in a seamless, clean way, because this technology you're using wasn't built with that in mind. So it's like now you're trying to connect things that just don't, not that you could do it. It's just like you suddenly go from being this, company that's been working this way all the time to having like more tech debt than you could possibly deal with. It's easier to just either acquire or start over,
Yeah, I think about that with like, different examples of that we've seen throughout history, rapid growth of technology, right? Like from, like you can look at cars, like a car that was built in the 70s may be a great vehicle, but to get it to do all the things a car built today can do, I didn't have my hands on the steering wheel for half my drive.
Right, exactly.
Like I couldn't make those turns. I didn't have my foot on the gas. Like none of that was happening.
Yep.
None of that, automation or AI, like none of that was taking place. That doesn't necessarily mean it was better, but it is vastly different.
Yeah.
And there are, some of it is a lot better, but like, like in that car in the 70s doesn't have seatbelts in the backseat.
Right.
Like,
or across the shoulder.
Or it doesn't have an airbag, and like, the radio is a dial. It still has keys, one for the car, one for the trunk, like all those things. If we were to reconfigure that vehicle to do all the things of a car today, you would have just basically built a new car.
Right, exactly.
It would be much more problematic to retrofit
and it's
all of these pieces, and almost impossible in some cases.
Well, and the thing that I find interesting is that the new vehicles feel far more advanced than it's like, to me, like if you're driving a Ford or a Mercedes or whatever, right? Like versus a Rivian, a Tesla, a Lucid,
they're very different.
They're very different because it's like they literally did build them from the ground up.
Experience is completely different. Yeah.
And so you kind of have, again, like somebody who's been doing it a one way forever and has factories and a lot of investment and all this kind of stuff to do it a certain way, tweaking what they're doing to try to get it as close as they can, versus a company who's starting from the ground up, starting from scratch, that can reorganize anything and put it anywhere to make it the best version of itself that they can make it. And I think that's at the end of the day, we're still on roads. I mean, it's not like, but I think that,
that's the burn the manual type of mindset.
Well, and that's the whole thing. That's where it's like, it's easy for me, self-serving, obviously, that say like, hey, we're the smaller marketing agency, right? Like we're not hundreds and hundreds of people deep and these kind of things. And that's why we're able to be way more, I mean, we always use, like ship analogies, right? Like, I mean, it's like if we were, if you're on a jet ski, that's the size of the vehicle you're operating. I mean, you could literally flip it over, and be going a new direction on a heartbeat, right? And, if you're, a cruise ship or something like that, like, or, one of those big, merchant, a shipping ship,
Yeah.
if you will, something like that. Like you ain't turning on a dime,
Right.
like you need a radius like pretty
You
significant.
gotta have you're talking to people about.
You got tugboats on either side, like it's a whole thing.
If it's gear to swing this way, or
Yeah. So these are, and so that's kind of like the, and of course that's the argument of like, this is why, like, it's like, yes, you can. And that's where it's always funny too, though, because as you see companies that crest into that, it's an interesting, we get in, it's this, we're talking about AI and automation, but I find it interesting because, the nature of business is to try to find ways to be profitable and to make money. I mean, that's what we're all trying to do. At the end of the day, like you're trying to, what's this value over somebody else's value? And, I think that the interesting part of that is like, there's a, like I said, it's self-serving in the sense that it's like we have this idea of like, hey, we're smaller, we're more nimble, we can do these things quicker. At the same time, like there is this goal, if you will, and in some way to like, how do I productize, verticalize, like make these things where it's a little bit more of a cookie cutter thing, because I can produce those faster at less cost, which increases margin, right? Like, so there's aspects of that, but it's, and of course that's where, finding ways to automate, if you will, like can potentially like have your one person be able to produce way more things, which is the same thing that AI is doing, right? Is like, hey, we can get, I can put out blog posts like it's my job, like, in minutes I can do hundreds, whereas previously that was like, a writer that then had to like think about the tone and how am I going to say this and what words do I use? And I mean, way different. And of course, still we have our writers reviewing the AI, but those are the kind of things that are interesting now. But I think that automation aspect of AI is really the game changer. Like the people that can do that are the ones that are nimble and eventually won't, eventually will grow and outpace and disrupt the big guys until the next technology comes out, right? Like, quantum computing or something. And then we're like, oh, well.
I think that's the thing with like a lot of businesses looking to work with agencies are doing, they're like, oh, we want to do all the new things. Like we want, why aren't you using AI? And why aren't you doing this? And
right.
How can we leverage AI? It's like, well, how much of what you currently do are you willing to adjust? Because a lot of what you currently do doesn't model into a lot of the new technology, right? Like you have these processes and they work for you and you don't want to disrupt them.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a lot of sense. You're making a lot of money. Why would you break that process?
Right.
But for some of the technology, like those processes need to change because they need to take into account this technology.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not willing to do that to leverage AI, like you just cramming a round rod into a square peg or into a square hole. Like it might fit, but like it's loose. Like there's just some areas where
it's issues
not aligned right. And so that, I think is a struggle that everybody wants to do the new thing. But they don't want to get rid of anything old.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it's back to that risk. I mean, we were talking about testing before, but it was like one of these things where, it's like, I can't make a mistake because then that's a problem, right? Like, or, I can't spend this money and not have a result that I need. Which, and all that stuff makes sense. I mean, I think, but that's where right now it's like, it's just a matter of time. I mean, even the stuff that we talked about regarding AI, I feel like, only a week or two ago, or whatever the hell it was like, now it's like stuff that I was saying is like, oh yeah, so Google's AI mode, suddenly it's like the whole thing that was interesting, that was the difference between Google and, ChatGPT or Grok or even Gemini outside of the search, was this idea of like, I could be very specific in my query and get results that were unique because my query was unique.
Right.
And I can write this whole long prompt. Whereas in a search, I can, it's like I do adjust my query depending on what results that I get, but it's within some sort of like, sentence bound, it's not, I don't write paragraphs to it. And so, and just that, like, what's funny about that is like, just, that's where I was, I'm just thinking is like, just talking about that, like few weeks ago, AI mode on Gemini is basically, now it's not showing search results that are clickable and all this kind of stuff, but that's, we're just like, now it feels like it's a day away from like not even, of no longer even being a point that I only made a couple weeks ago,
Well, and I think what's funny about stuff like AI mode and even using Gemini and all these other things is I don't know anybody outside of marketing who uses any of those. Not to
Sure.
say that that it hasn't gotten there yet, or that my group is all encompassing of like what people do online.
For sure.
But I feel like a lot of the marketing stuff that's done by a lot of these big companies, and not even necessarily marketing stuff that is being done and being talked about in marketing spaces, takes a while to get to the general public for use.
Sure.
Like when I go to Google, I'm still generally thinking of like a short query.
Yep.
I haven't retrained my brain to be like, okay, I can use this like I use several other AI based, like I can write a full prompt and I can put in like reference points and I can do all of this, research this. And look
even
at this link, look at this.
And to your point, even like you probably still use Google better than other people do, right? Like, I mean, I think about my parents write what they write in Google versus my ability to use like, different minus this, like results or whatever I'm doing or cite, things and putting in additional like modifiers in order to get a better result. I want this to be exact match versus not, right? Versus just the common person using Google is like, they just write it in. It's like Google figured it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, so that makes sense. I mean, it is like, even though, there is that aspect of being at the forefront of what's going on in this world, like there's still time.
Who's your audience? Like, is your audience, well, we would talk about this a lot with, previous agency I was at where we worked with car dealerships, and all of their internal tech was still like the blue screen, like pressing up, down, right, left, 2 or 3. Yeah. Like they didn't want it to look like an actual website. Like we're car guys. We want this to be simple and we want to like solve it. So like those people, AI mode was not probably built for them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, who's your audience for all of this technology? How are you getting it in front of people? The only places I've really seen it promoted, so to speak, are at like Google marketing, Google, Google I/O, search engine land, like Moz, like those are the type of people writing about it and those are the people using it. And I'm not saying again that that's not a large percentage of people who use Google, but they're also much more
but it
advanced.
Is like right.
So like
for
if
sure.
you're
that is where we should. If
you're
be
selling
talking,
e-commerce, right? Like most of your clients probably aren't, putting in like, I like my jeans to fit this way and I like this style and I, here are some here's me in a few different outfits, like please style me and give me a few stores to like go to or research. Like that's unlikely to happen at this stage, but it will soon enough. It will be like that.
But if you have a Gen Zer, like that is what they're doing. So I think, but yeah, I totally agree. And I think that is the nature, the speed with which things happen. Like it, just like anything, like, I mean, we see that technology curve. I mean, it's not, it's, it's like almost a straight up line at this point, right? Like it's exponential, not linear. So the pace with which things are changing, but there is still, like you're talking about, there is still some period of adoption and some period of doing things. And that's where talking about, B2C versus B2B and these types of things too, where a lot of the things that I think about is like the B2B market, and a lot of our customers are in that market as well. And so just thinking of how, other marketing agencies or other big marketing, places that are like, yeah, we do this, and this, and they get, it's just always fascinating to me is like the droves of people that flock to them. And yet it's like, man, but their product is inferior because they don't have the bandwidth and the capability of taking advantage of the modern like space. And it's not like, and I feel like you can get away with that for like the last 20 years, maybe, or, like if you didn't go to the internet, maybe, or, of course that's a little bit longer ago than that, but like, we're moving into like a very like different period of time. I think everybody can feel it, right? Like, I
Oh, for
mean,
sure.
this isn't, this is like the internet again. And so we're kind of at the forefront of that. And if you're not like an ability to build models that take advantage of that, and granted, like, I don't know if you saw, like, I saw something around Apple came out with like a critique on all the current big AIs. Did you see that?
Yep.
And so, there's always, and granted, God, talking to Siri is like the most painful thing. What an experience. It's like, for
Yeah.
the love of God, as much as I love Apple and, Tim Cook went to Auburn, I'm a fan, right? Like, so there's aspects of this, but it's like, for the love of God, man, like for the stuff that you do well, like, man, like, can we fix this? And then like to put a critique out to say like, yeah, if it gets overly complicated, but I've seen that, like, the whole thing is like what he's saying, it resonates because I've seen that same problem where it seems like it gets lazy at some point, where it's like starts to just be like, oh yeah, I read half of what you wrote.
Yep.
It's like, dude, you missed like 60% of like the part of the prompt or this page that I put in there that was the transcript from this meeting, and you started making shit up halfway through
So
the results of the summary.
Wouldn't you include like this very important piece in
Right.
like what you're delivering back to me?
Exactly. So so there is this aspect of it's not,
Yeah.
it's not there yet. It ain't human yet. But still, like, if if you aren't taking advantage of that, or basing all of your future,
Yep.
I think, builds and practices and processes on that existing, then, it's just a matter of time before the speed with which you fall behind accelerates. Like, you may
Yeah.
be a little bit behind today, but like, that is not slowing down.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
this is a acceleration.
I don't think there's, like I was saying, that not everybody's using all of these things now on a consumer standpoint.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you can like stay there and be like, well, it'll be some time. But like, no, it's here, and you need to be here and looking for
Yeah.
beyond, or building with that in mind, and being able to service people where they are.
Yep.
Like, you need to still be where they are, but know that they're only going to be there for a second.
Yeah.
Like with any ball sport, it's like you put it where they are going to be,
Yep.
not where they are currently are. Because if you aim for where they are, by the time it gets there,
Yep.
it's behind.
Behind them. Yep. And that's I mean, it's nice for us because that's what gives us customers at the moment, right? Is because these people aren't doing all of that. But I think, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, it is, and I see it when we go and, I see it at conferences. You can see the folks that used to be the big names and the big things that, suddenly, like, their market's gone away because it's like the technology just outpaced what it is that, that they do. And there wasn't an easy way to like pivot.
Blockbuster, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Blockbuster is a great example. We were like access control, and we're talking about like things like, keys for doors and things like this, right? Like, I mean, I my car, I don't even use my phone. I don't even use a key. So there's like, and so when you think about, like, again, I was at the apartment association, so you're thinking about like key management, like, how long is that going to continue to exist, right? Because just at some point it just becomes like there's no a need for it anymore in the same
walk
way.
up to, like with your car, walk up to it with your phone in your pocket, and it unlocks.
And it
notices
unlocks,
that you're
right?
so close, and you can,
like, even the key fobs on regular cars,
Yep.
right? Like, I mean, there's no longer like a key.
Yeah.
You push a start button as long as the key's close enough. So there's, it's not to say that there's not examples where that's never going to be the case, but it's just, the point is, like, think about you're against that addressable market, and how quickly that's starting to shrink versus the rest. And so, this is just the same thing, like, of what are you doing right now if you're not, and thinking about just your generally largest expense being your labor pool, and how effective is that team of people if they're not in a position to leverage AI and then automation with AI, so that they can focus on the things that humans are really good at, like, having a conversation with, and even that, like, I say that obviously, like, AI's chat. I mean, it does a pretty good job. but just different things, it's like, that's the stuff, like, you need the people to be doing the stuff that people are good at, and then, try to maximize how many things that you can have AI and automation with AI do, so that, you can get away from the screen and start doing other stuff. So, cool.
Yeah.
I think that, covers automation and AI, in my opinion, unless
Yeah.
you had something you thought.
No, I think, you use automation for all the task-based repeating things, and
Yeah.
you use AI to help identify problems, challenges, and areas you can improve.
Yeah. And then there's tools out there that are combining that automation and integration at least for single channel. I think the next thing is going to be multiple channel. And that's a big thing too, is like, ChatGPT and Grok and, Juniper and Mutiny and, I'll just name a bunch of AIs. They don't talk to each other.
Right.
And that's one of the, challenges today, is like, there are tools out there now that are helping, codeless kind of automation of things with leveraging AI, but they're kind of single source.
Yep.
You take this tool and you do this thing and it works. And it's a matter of time, but it's one of those things, like taking those different GPTs and those databases and large language models, and then taking that information collectively and having a better
Yep.
result. But yeah, then we'll just, we'll just say, like, what shoes should we get? And it'll just tell us, because it already knows everything
Yeah.
about us. And it's like, these are
Going
the
for a
shoes you
run,
get.
what shoes? And you should
Yeah.
Here.
It knows. It's like, well,
It's like based on your stride pattern,
exactly, your stride pattern, who you like the people you follow, like,
how hot it is,
right, exactly. Be like,
how high above sea level you
it'll
are.
think of all of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
It'll already know all of that, and the fact that you have 30 cents in your bank account, you should get some sandals.
Yeah.
But awesome.